Okay, so today we'll talk about what it takes to build a startup with hardware and no funding. And before we jump in, a quick overview of Augury, just to give you some context for the rest of this presentation. So Augury was founded 4 years ago by myself and my co-founder. Both of us are engineers, graduates of the Technion in Israel. I studied electrical engineering and physics. My co-founder studied computer science. And when we started Augury, we decided that before we bring external investors, we want to prove that the technology actually works and that there is a market out there for it. So we spent the first couple of years completely self-funded, bootstrapping Augury. And what we do in Augury is we listen to machines. And based on the noise that they make, we can tell if they're working properly, if they have a malfunction, and even what type of malfunction they have. We do this by connecting a vibration and ultrasonic sensor that you see there to your smartphone, and then applying machine learning algorithms on the acoustic signal. So we're kind of like Shazam, but for machines. Now, this can be used across the board, from industrial factories like this one, where you have big, expensive machinery, and all the way to your home, right, where you have the washing machine, refrigerator, dishwasher, a lot of mechanical systems that nobody is currently monitoring. And that's where we want to be at the end of the road. We want to be inside everything that has moving parts. We're building the mechanical diagnostics platform of the Internet of Things. Our first market is commercial buildings, more specifically HVAC, which stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning of commercial facilities. And this could be an office building like this one, a hospital, shopping center, even a factory is considered a commercial facility. And our customers are the service companies. They have the actual technicians that go around from building to building and do the repairs. Our business model is like software as a service. There is a very small fee for the device itself, for the hardware itself, and then we charge a subscription per machine or per technician. So let's see how it works. The technician, which usually looks like this, right, walks up to the machine, attaches the sensor with a magnet, connects with smartphone, and starts recording. The data is sent to our servers, where we compare it to the history of this specific machine and to similar machines. And we then return the diagnostics and treatment recommendation back to the smartphone. And that's it, right? In under 5 minutes, the technician knows exactly what he or she needs to do in order to fix this machine. We're working with the 2 largest HVAC service companies in the US. And our goal is to have the top 5 by the end of the year. And using our system, they recorded over 1,000 machines in over 200 facilities. And today, we'd like to share, or I'd like to share, how we got here, right? From the idea stage, after 4 years, to a military-grade, waterproof, drop-proof, and product. And let's start with a question. Who heard the term lean before? Who heard it over 20 times in the past 2 days? Right, so it's very overhyped, in the past year or so. And when we started Augury 4 years ago, we were probably the first ones to apply it to hardware. Today you have lean startup, of course. You have lean marketing, lean branding, lean UX, and where it all started, lean manufacturing, lean thinking, right? So we're part of the lean startup movement. It was called customer development before. And I'll only give a quick primer to lean startup. We won't go too deep into it. But one of the basic premises that is very hard for us as engineers to grasp is that the technology in and of itself is not that interesting, right? What is interesting is answering these 3 questions. What are you building? Who's going to use it? And why is it going to pay? And before you answer these questions, you shouldn't write 1 line of code, or in your case, start building hardware, right? So the first step is to answer these 3 questions, and you do so by getting out of the building and talking to a lot of people. And the basic notion of lean startup is having very fast iterations where you build something, throw it out into the field, get lots of feedback, right? Learn from it, and then go at it again. And with each iteration, we want to find what is the minimum effort that maximizes our learning, right? As makers or as hardware developers, investing $20,000 in plastic molds probably isn't the minimum, as the first step. Going and answering these three questions is, and this is called customer development. Traditionally, it's paired with agile software development, and in this case, it's much, much harder, right? A mistake in the very early definition of your product can haunt you, and it will be very, very hard and expensive to fix later on. So you start with research, right? You go to the whiteboard. You try to answer these three questions, and you do it again by getting out of the building, talk to anyone in your market that will agree to. And I highly recommend sticking to the process. There are tons of books on how to go through the whole lean process, and it really removes all the bias and maximizes your learning. At the beginning, you draw a map of your ecosystem. Who are the different players? What is their value? What is, how do they interact with you or with other players? Then you put it all in your lean canvas, which is very, very hard to do at the beginning, in the first time, but, oops, sorry. It's very hard to do at the beginning, but as you go on, you start thinking from the lean canvas, and it really improves the whole process. And then you identify and prioritize the risks, and this helps you define the first MVP, the first product that you will build. And MVP is minimum viable product, and a hardware MVP, rule of thumb, if it doesn't have wires sticking out, rubber bands, or duct tape, you probably took it too far, right? For us, the first MVP, or the first risk we wanted to mitigate was, can we connect a sensor to a smartphone? And again, this was 4 years ago. Android just came out with the ADK, the Android device kit. And this is the first thing we tackled. Once we proved that, we put it in a nice box, right? And we're ready to go out to the field. And pay attention to the small stuff that really give you credibility. Adding your logo to the board or as a sticker to the device makes you look much more as a real company and not two guys, in the garage or at WeWork. And then take this device, go out to the market and research. Give it to people to use. Use it yourself, see the interaction. And you are ready for the alpha. I suggest starting with smaller test sites. You have a lot to lose, and you will probably mess up along the way, right? The hardware won't work, the software won't work, or you understand that you're building the wrong product. Measure everything, through user interviews, through usage metrics. Keep a log of everything that happens and use it later on in order to iterate. And then you're ready to approach the larger customers once you know what you're building and you have a better sense of the value. So this is our alpha version. Of course, we built everything by ourselves, including cutting the foam for the packaging. We gave it out to building technicians instead of going to the largest service companies at the beginning. And we actually replaced the rubber bands with Velcro at this stage, which is much more professional. Beta. So now you've proven the value, right? You have all the metrics, you have maybe ROI. Hopefully you have some success stories to share. And now you can really start, the design process and leverage the existing connections and relationships you have in this process. For us, at this stage we raised our seed round, so we had more funding and we could move faster and work with industrial design companies like this. And we gave 5 options to our customers and asked, which one do you prefer? The initial response was, who cares? Does it work? Okay. But as you throw it out to them and you let them feel it a bit, you observe their interactions, we gradually move towards version C. We had some 3D models printed out. We made sure our circuit board fits in, and we had our beta version. This time, we put it in a fancy bag that we bought from Best Buy, off the shelf, shipped it to our customers, and we're good to go. But this is only the beginning. Now is the hard part. You have to keep on iterating, keep on pushing forward, coming up with new ideas, testing them on users, reacting to problems as they happen, right? We had 3 RMAs, meaning we had to replace all of the devices 3 times during the beta due to problems. And the only way to survive that is by building a relationship with your customer and building the confidence with them, right? And we apply the react, fix, improve process, where first of all, take all the blame, right? Let's take this as an example. We had our first connector that we used, which was interchangeable. You could disconnect the cable. It turned out it wasn't that rugged as they promised. So we had cables disconnecting all over the place. First of all, it's our fault, right? Now let's employ a quick fix. So we super glued all of the cables to the connector. So nobody could disconnect them, but at least it's working. And we started working on the improvement on the next version. We quickly designed using a much more rugged connector, and within a month we sent it out to the customers. And when you do that, improve the design. And when you do that, you find out that during the assembly process, they didn't tighten the screw as they should have. So we had these connectors popping out everywhere. Of course, this happened, I found this out in the hotel room before we deployed them. So I went out, bought a set of pliers and some super glue, and fixed all of them until 2 a.m., the night before the beta. Of course, I had to test it on the hotel microwave to make sure I didn't mess anything up. And it's not only improving the design, you also need to improve the process. In this case, we learned a lot about quality control and what steps you need to take before you can deploy a device to the customers. In our case, it means testing it out in our lab and the office air conditioning, just to make sure everything works before we send it out. Now, during the process, you get a lot of old devices, right? And of course, you will try to reuse all the components you can and recycle everything, but it may seem wasteful, right? But this is not waste. Waste is manufacturing 1,000 devices only to later understand that nobody wants to use them, right? This is what progress looks like. And if you go with small iterations and fast iterations, that's the way you get to the final product. And now it's time to go big. So you validate the design, you know what you're building, and now it's time to make a real product out of it, right? So this is when you invest in real molds for the plastics, go to a real assembly line with all the quality control in place, build all the collaterals, right, all the packaging, user manual, and you look like a real company. So to summarize, always travel with a set of pliers and super glue in your suitcase, right? That's step number 1. Be prepared for everything. And if something goes wrong, you can still find the way to make it better. And it's all about the balance, right? You always need to think 2 steps ahead, be prepared for the next one. Focus on the next one, and be prepared to move 1 step back, which will happen more than once. Thank you.
Thank you. So we talk a lot about the consumer Internet of Things. There's been a bunch of people here presenting. This is more the industrial side, the enterprise side. I'm curious about your thoughts on the state of readiness, I guess, of the market. Are people very willing to engage in those conversations? Are they curious? Are they buying? Where are we in the cycle?
Sure. So the industrial IoT is much further behind than the consumer side. But that's a good thing, right? The good news is that whereas on the consumer side, your product is, you're probably aiming to make the user happier, make him feel better. On the industrial side, they lose money, and you can help them save money. So the value is much easier to prove. It's a bit harder IT-wise, going into a factory. Connectivity isn't a given. Sometimes you can't even use wireless inside a factory. So there are different types of challenges, but we think it's worthwhile. And even though, one second, even though our vision is to go to the consumer eventually, we're starting with industrial because the value proposition is much stronger there.
Okay, to that point, what do you guys rely on for connectivity in the factory? Just anything that's available? Or?
So initially we developed what you saw here, which is a handheld device that connects to a smartphone. So we use the smartphone for everything. And if the technician is, if the machinery is in the basement, we do everything offline, and when he goes out, we can connect. We are currently working on our continuous monitoring platform. And we see ourselves as a big data company that happens to have hardware. So we will use off-the-shelf components, probably Helium or other competitors.
Okay, that's a question from me, and then I'll pass it on to whoever wants to ask a question. I thought it was really interesting that you had that little bit of the design elements built into your product, or you had the timeline, machine stock, release. How do you think about that, bringing a sort of consumer design, aesthetic almost to industrial matters?
Yeah, it really matters. We saw in the past, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, they call it the consumerization of the enterprise, right? You've heard the term before. And we're trying to do the same for industrial. And you go out to a technician that repairs pumps all day long, and he has a screwdriver and a hammer, and now you're letting him use his smartphone, which he knows from his personal life because he has Facebook, he has Twitter, I don't know if Twitter, but he has Facebook. And you're giving him the same tools, and all of a sudden his work is much more high-tech, and he feels better about himself.
Okay. So it's true the software world, but also in the hardware world and industrial world. Do we have questions? Yes.
When I read about large companies, I can see that they are all talking about things and all today connecting their machineries to a special system of ITERATE. And in fact, they say that they will be able to do the kind of thing that you are doing. So a company like GE, like Ford, are really trying to do, are doing what they're doing. Do you see them as a competition, or how do you?
Yeah. So there's a lot of talk, and the IoT has, even the industrial IoT has become a bit of a hype term, like Lean Startup. The question is, do we see all the large companies that are playing in this market as competition? So the only real competition we see is GE. They're the only head-on competition. And GE is focusing on the high-end markets, so on wind turbines, gas turbines, and jet engines. We're going to building maintenance and washing machines. So even though they are competition, we deliberately focus on lower markets in order not to compete with them.
Thanks for the great presentation. Just wondering is, what is the essence of the ROI? I assume that if you can detect a problem with rotating machinery, such as vibration or something like that, that can be corrected and extend the life of the machinery.
Yeah.
Can you just give us some hints as to the value rate we're creating?
Sure. So there are 3 types. So there are 3 types of maintenance paradigms. Reactive maintenance, which is wait for it to blow up and then replace it. Preventive maintenance, which is what you do on your car. Every year or 10,000 miles, you replace everything. And then you have predictive maintenance, which says don't replace it because someone told you to. Check for the condition and then replace it when you actually need to. And this has 3 main advantages. First, you can reduce maintenance costs by up to 30% because you replace less parts. You can eliminate almost 75% of the breakdowns because you can detect malfunctions before they happen. And the third is you reduce energy consumption by up to 20%. And the problem is that that value breaks up differently along the ecosystem or the value chain. And we chose to begin with a service company because the value there is the most immediate for us, or easiest to prove.
Cool. Let's do one more. One last one. I'll run to you.
moving from providing a device into the hand for spot inspections to having a resident sensor to collect data on a continuous basis. Have you transitioned to that? Are you transitioning to that? What are the challenges you see in transition from a point device to a resident continuous monitoring?
So, we have a lot of components to our product. The hardware is only one part of it, right? We have the back end, how do you store all the data? We have the algorithms, how do you get insights from the data? And we have the front end of how do you expose those insights. From the from the internet, let's call it, from the cloud onwards, it doesn't really need to change, right? It's a different type, maybe a different type of algorithm, but it's very similar to what we're doing today. The device will change dramatically, right? Our goal eventually is to work with manufacturers in order to integrate it into their equipment. And we're already working with the two largest chiller manufacturers on embedding it. And the next time you buy a chiller, which is only $2 million, so you should, it will come with Augury inside.
All right, that's all the time we have. Thank
Cool.
you very much for being here.
Thank you.
That was great. Thank you.